All right. So we were talking a little bit about this idea of organizational structure, matrixed organizations, functional organization, the org chart, reporting structures, power structures, information flow. But what does that all mean in the context of a value stream, right? How do we reconcile value streams and the flow of work across an organization? Andrew, how do you think about this, and how do you sort of advise people to think about this in a way that really optimizes outcomes and performance?
So when you and I first started having these conversations, we were strongly leaning into the idea that, the org chart was dead and that we need to, move past the org chart and these hierarchical traditional structures for command and control, which is not the way to do it anymore, and so forth. But we've I think moderated our point of view, or I've moderated my point of view since that time, just to sort of appreciate that a traditional hierarchical org chart structure, it is just a system for a structure for the flow of information and control. And I was reading about like cybernetic systems as being managing the flow of information and control. And that's really all we're doing. You have a reporting structure, you share information up and down with your boss, your local team, you guys share information. There's a control structure, so someone above you can tell you do this or don't do that. Now, then if you ask the question, and then of course, this is a very different structure from the value stream by which work gets done. Then someone asked us the question recently, well, how does value stream thinking apply to matrixed organizations? Well, a matrixed organization is just a structure where you have two lines, two formal definitions for the flow of information and control. For example, I might technically report to the head of QA, but to make sure that I'm always up to speed with the latest, greatest testing tools and have a lot of QA colleagues that I can collaborate with. But on a day-to-day basis, I work for, the department that looks after the billing application. And so there is a flow of information and control from the QA team to me. There's a flow of information and control from my billing application department to me, and so forth. But those are really just the formal networks. There's also all the informal networks for the flow of information. There's the water cooler network. There's the old friend and drinking buddy network. There's the, hey, I need to get this done network. And then within all of this, there's the value stream that flows sort of laterally, if you want, from across departments, and where, in fact, there is the least overlap and similarity between the business analysts and the developers and the testers and the very different set of specializations and the legal team and so forth. So there's very little similarity between these folks, except that they all need each other to get work done. So you'd asked this question, who do you report to? And if you're in a simple org chart structure, you know who I report to, my manager or whatever. If you're in a matrixed organization, well, I kind of report to two people. In the value stream, basically, that's the only structure that reports to the customer. The customer is your boss, right? And you've got to keep that in mind. Like, I work for the customer, right? And the customer is the one that tells us by the flow of information back that they need a new thing, or they need a modification, or they got a bug. And we're the ones that respond by delivering, hopefully, what they want. And that's, if there's a single piece flow, a really lean flow, it's just in time. They say, hey, we need this, and you hustle, right? And you hustle and you go and deliver that as quickly as possible. And you can only do that when there's a lot of slack in the organization, when there's a lot of free time and free capacity, where you've got the ability to be instantaneously responsive to the customer. And it's the customer that dictates action, as opposed to just jumping when your boss says go.
Yeah, the idea of Slack, I think, is very interesting. I think that's this idea that, if you want to jump, if you want to be able to act on demand, you need space in order to do that. But I think that, recently we've explored this idea of capacity, right? And I think it's a capacity issue. It's you can have a very tightly tuned system that's responsive, but who you respond to, I think, is the really interesting piece here. And because in a matrixed organization, you might be responding to a functional lead, right? You might be responding to a functional lead because that's how you get promoted, right? You might be trying to follow their example or trying to impress them so that you get promoted. In a a traditional org chart hierarchy, where you have maybe you have a lead that's more divisionally oriented. You would be trying to follow their lead. And I love this idea of reporting to the customer, because then you're responding to their needs, and ultimately that's what we want, right? That drives the most positive outcome, the most long-term sustainable positive outcome. And I think that's really powerful, that idea of reporting to the customer. And as we move in this direction, it's a very unifying focal point. It kind of pulls you. I mean, we talk about push versus pull, but I think that focus on reporting to the customer pulls the organization into stream alignment, right? You can't help but organize your teams and your organization into this flow that facilitates reporting to the customer and getting feedback from the customer. I mean, one thing about reporting to leadership is that what you really want is feedback, right? What you really want is, yes, keep going, pivot a little bit here or there, focus more here, a little bit less here. You seem to be stuck in this area. You seem not to be capitalizing on your strengths. And so, try to focus a little bit more here. Getting that from the customer is going to drive all of this positive behavior. And also, I think that we're in this time right now where we no longer need that kind of command and control management, right? We do not need that feedback from a functional manager or somebody in a hierarchy, because we have things like value stream management that's giving you performance feedback as a team. And you can have mentorship, you can have pairing with other professionals in the organization in order to maintain your capabilities or improve your capabilities. But day-to-day management can now be fully automated, which means we're now in a, it's like this perfect time where you can really start to report to the customer. And I think that's really powerful.
And as we're in a transitional state, there's two ways transitions happen, radical revolution and restructuring and totally new ways of working, or gradual evolution. Certainly for most organizations, radical restructuring is not an option, but gradually making that value stream more and more visible, less and less hidden. So as you make that more and more visible, then it's relative. Once it enters awareness and you can begin optimizing around it, its relative importance begins to grow. And then you can have a state where there's a transition where it's balanced, because there is a place for the central single hierarchical structure. Like if you're just looking at the finances for an organization, at some point you've got to roll it up to one number, like net profit, and all the departments roll up their numbers. And so there may be places for these traditional hierarchies and structures, and you still may need a flow of information and control from a variety of groups, but like figuring out how to balance that. Anyway, it's a great transition for us all. Thanks so much, Steve, for the question.
Oh, thank you. This is great.